Women around the world continue to express their solidarity with the women's marches here in the West. Jihan, a Yazidi woman in Iraq, told reporters, quote, "I stood up and cheered when Scarlett Johansson highlighted the terrible injustice that Hollywood actresses are paid fewer millions than Hollywood actors simply because they don't draw as large an audience. Or at least I would have stood up and cheered if I hadn't been chained to the wall of the house where I'm being held as a sex slave by the same Islamist who slaughtered my children and my husband. I was feeling pretty bad about that, I admit, but now I realize it is nothing compared to the plight of American actresses. Women in Los Angeles may look wealthy and coddled and privileged and whiny and self-obsessed and narcissistic and self-obsessed and coddled and privileged and whiny. But who am I to judge? After all, I'm just a sex slave," unquote. In Yemen, housewife Thana Nawal told reporters how she reacted to Ashley Judd's "I'm a nasty woman" speech, saying, quote, "I swear to Allah I would have applauded this nasty actress if my husband would not have beaten me for disturbing him. How terrible it is that Ashley Judd must have her period, which stains her favorite underwear. I fear this will even be a problem for me when I start to have my period, which might come as early as when I turn 12. Also, my heart bleeds for America's mistreatment of homosexuals by those who disapprove of them, which is almost like the Nazi Holocaust, except it leaves the homosexuals alive, which of course we would never do," unquote. Finally, Saudi housewife Hissa Malik says she was inspired by the fact that the co-leader of the Women's March was Palestinian-American radical Linda Sarsour, who believes in bringing Sharia law to America. Mrs. Malik said, quote, "Linda Sarsour has proudly proclaimed that we women here in Saudi Arabia get 10 weeks paid maternity leave. I have certainly had a lot of time to reflect on how lucky we are since I am serving a year in prison for posting online pictures of my husband raping our maid. This, of course, defamed my husband terribly by showing everyone the rape he was committing in the privacy of his own home. I am so glad Women's March leader Linda Sarsour is seeking to bring Sharia to America because all those inspiring women in pussy hats would then be arrested, as they deserve. Really, it would drive me crazy not to have Sharia if I were allowed to drive," unquote. Of course, the Women's March didn't just inspire women. When female marchers bared their breasts and dressed up as gigantic vaginas, it also inspired many 13-year-old boys who already believe women are gigantic vaginas with bared breasts, but were afraid that was just some stupid adolescent fantasy they were having until the Women's March proved that no, on the left, it's reality. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
I guess I should review those illustrations before I start talking. That last one really cracked me up. All right, tomorrow is the mailbag. I should let you know. Hey, hooray. And so you've got to subscribe to thedailywire.com. For a lousy $8 a month, you get to ask your questions. We will answer questions. They are now guaranteed 100% correct. We've lost that little 0.3% or whatever it was of error. We're now getting them all right, and they will change your life entirely, sometimes for the better. Also, I should mention it's January 31st, which means, as we all know, that this is the last day you can get my memoir on Kindle. The Great Good Thing, A Secular Jew Comes to Faith in Christ, is, I think, $2.99 for one more day only, so you can buy it now. All right, back into the world of complete chaos and craziness from our little island, our little floating, orbiting island of sanity here on the Andrew Klavan Show. It's like we're kind of going around the earth and we see the fires and the flames, but we're fine. Everything is fine here. So we got to start with the news. Well, but let's start with the news. Sally Yates, the acting attorney general, until Jeff Sessions is nominated, would not enforce Trump's order. Trump's immigration order, the temporary ban on accepting refugees. 7 countries, Muslim majority countries, were cited And she says, she sent out a note saying, at present, I am not convinced that the defense of the executive order is consistent with the Justice Department's responsibilities, nor am I convinced that the executive order is lawful. For as long as I am the acting Attorney General, the Department of Justice will not present arguments in defense of the executive order until I become convinced that it is appropriate to do so. The important phrase there is, for as long as I am the acting Attorney General, which was not very long because here was Trump's response.
You're fired.
I couldn't resist. We had to use that, right? I mean, you can't let that go. So now there's a new guy, Dana J. Boyente, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, is taking her place. First thing he did was rescind that order. Here's Trump's statement firing her. I love this statement. It's classic Donald Trump, you know. He said, the acting Attorney General, Sally Yates, has betrayed the Department of Justice by refusing to enforce a legal order designed to protect the citizens of the United States. Ms. Yates is an Obama administration appointee who is weak on borders and very weak on illegal immigration. At least we know he's writing his own stuff, you know. It's time to get serious about protecting our country. Calling for tougher vetting for individuals traveling from 7 dangerous places is not extreme. It is reasonable and necessary to protect our country. So not only, you know, she shouldn't have been there in the first place. He should have gotten rid of her before. She's an Obama appointee. It was so easy. This kind of heroism is so easy. She's in the wrong. Trump is in the right. There's no question about this. I mean, just imagine. Well, let's let Alan Dershowitz, the law professor, he explained this.
Well, Sally Yates is a terrific public servant, but I think she's made a serious mistake here. This is holdover heroism. It's so easy to be a heroine when you're not appointed by this president and when you're on the other side. She made a serious mistake. I think what she should have done is done a nuanced analysis of what parts of the order are constitutional, what parts are in violation of the statute, what parts are perfectly lawful. There's an enormous distinction between green card holders on the one hand, people who are in the country and have to be thrown out on the second hand, and people who are simply applying to get visas. There is also a distinction between what's constitutional, what's statutorily prohibited, what's bad policy, this is very bad policy, but what's lawful. And I think by lumping all of them together, she has made a political decision rather than a legal one.
See, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, there's a lot of people playing this tape of Jeff Sessions questioning Yates and saying, would you be willing to stand up to the president? And of course, the Attorney General does have to stand up to the president when she thinks the president is doing something illegal, but that is not the case. And what Dershowitz said is there may have been illegal parts of this or mistaken parts of this she could have stood up on, but she just stood up on the whole thing. That was a political decision. Also, this idea going around that this is like Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre is nonsense. I mean, Nixon wanted to fire the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox, who was investigating him, and the Attorney General refused to do it and quit. He said, I cannot do this, so I quit, which would be a thing of integrity to do. If Sally Yates had done that, nobody could argue with her. But what she did was showboating. It was ridiculous. And then somebody else fired. And finally, it was Bork, I think, who fired Archibald Cox. And they got him back for it when they kept him off the Supreme Court. So, I mean, this is just like if Jeff Sessions got appointed and he said, you know, abortion law is in violation of the right to life. You know, the right to life is in our founding documents, and so yes, the Supreme Court said that, you know, the abortion is a human right, but I'm not going to enforce that. We're not enforcing that anymore, and if any state violates that, we're not. You know, it would be ridiculous. You would have to get rid of him. He's just not. That would be a political decision. But what I want to talk about a little bit is the atmosphere in the press that the press is trying to create and why they're trying to create this. The New York Times, a former newspaper, reports on this firing, and they said their lead is in an escalating crisis for his 10-day-old administration. And if you read the front page of the New York Times, this is all it is. Shockwaves in immigrant communities. Foreign leaders ask, can we trust Trump? Here's a headline from USA Today. Sessions faces Senate vote as Trump throws DOJ into chaos from 538. Politics podcast, chaos at the White House. Business Insider, a presidency in chaos. Legendary investigative journalist, that's Bernstein, who's a lib. CNN, Trump move leads to confusion and chaos. There's chaos everywhere. It's just incredible chaos. And of course, Obama, after 10 days of keeping his mouth shut, you know, for a while, I couldn't even remember who the last president was. You know, I kept saying, I remember he was like this tall, thin guy. I can't, you know, what was his name? So I think Obama was getting a little bit upset about this because because Trump has done so much in these 10 days that it's really easy to just forget Obama, who really, remember, Obama accomplished nothing. He passed like one law, and he passed fewer laws than any president in history, and all he did was these executive orders. So, yeah, Trump hasn't done, there haven't been any legislation in the first 10 days here either, but it does have this appearance of really getting down to work and treating this like a job. So Obama had his guy send out a statement. President Obama is heartened by the level of engagement taking place in communities around the country. So he loves the protests. Right? Citizens exercising their constitutional right to assemble, organize, and have their voices heard by their elected officials is exactly what we expect to see when American values are at stake. Obama fundamentally disagrees with the notion of discriminating against individuals because of their faith or religion, which this order does not do. But we'll get back to this in a minute. And this, by the way, is from the guy who pulled out of Iraq, so letting ISIS explode, who stood there with his hand up his fundament while the Syria exploded into civil war. He took until the last year, he took very, very few of the refugees in a situation he helped create while 500,000 people died. Trump has, as part of his executive order, he is trying to create safe spaces in Syria and in Muslim-controlled countries. It's a completely reasonable thing to do. And talking about the escalating crisis and the chaos, here is from Rasmussen. Most voters approve of President Trump's temporary halt to refugees and visitors from several Middle Eastern and African countries until the government can do a better job of keeping out individuals who are a terrorist threat. I mean, it's basic common sense. A new Rasmussen Reports National Telephone and Online Survey finds that 57% of likely U.S. voters favor a temporary ban on refugees from Syria, Iraq, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen until the federal government approves its ability to screen out potential terrorists. 33% are opposed, so a third. So 57%. In America, that's a big percentage. That's a lot of people who agree. Okay, so Let's stop for a minute and just judge of this chaos. Where is this chaos coming from? Is there chaos? I mean, it doesn't sound like there's chaos if the president does something that 57% of the people approve of. But we do have to admit this. How can I put this? It was not smoothly done. I think we can say, one of the things about Trump is he's a rude guy. He's a blustering, rude, loudmouth guy. And we like that when he is taking it out on the press and the people who have hogtied conservatives in our government with political correctness, with unfair coverage, with a blanket one-party vision of what's going on. And so the Republicans are like shattered people. They're like trembling, traumatized children who are so afraid of opening their mouths, even when the voters support them, because they know the press and their donors are going to come after them, okay? So we like Trump because he breaks through that. He said, you press, you're the most dishonest people, you lie, all this stuff. Great stuff. It's great stuff. But when you're doing something that's controversial, sometimes it takes a little panache, just a little style. And he didn't have it. Here's Krauthammer describing why this was such a disaster.
I mean, it is utterly ridiculous, first of all, to give no guidance as to what you do with somebody holding a green card. Then you change the guidance. You should have stated from the beginning, if you have a green card, you're not going to be stopped. They were stopped. That should never have happened.
So they rushed it.
It's not only that they rushed it, they did it in a terrible way. In theory, of course, you want to have a strengthened vetting process. A new administration should have the chance to review procedures, but you don't announce that you're going to all of a sudden have a new process and stop everybody who's already flying, already in the air with a valid visa, and stop them when they land.
I mean, the thing is, the head of the Department of Homeland Security was basically in a plane, I think, having a conversation about this executive order when he looked up and saw Trump on TV announcing the executive order. So it does, a little bit of chaos from the administration, no question about it. A little bit of, incompetence. My thing about this, though, is like if Trump violates our basic freedoms, if he goes against the Constitution, if he does things as president that I would have screamed if Obama did them because they are tyrannical and not in keeping with the separation of powers and all this stuff, then the argument that, oh, the press said this about Obama and now they're being unfair, then that argument doesn't hold water. It doesn't always hold water to just compare Trump to let Trump off the hook just because the press is unfair to them. But in the question of competence after 10 days in office, I don't know. I'm a little relaxed about this. Hey, we got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube, but come on over to thedailywire.com and get out your $8 and subscribe so you can ask questions, any question you want, your personal life, your love life, your religion, politics. Answers are guaranteed 100% correct and guaranteed to change your life, possibly for the better.